I pulled up to my lake house expecting peace, quiet, the smell of pine, and the soft lapping of water against the dock. But what I found instead made my blood run cold. Someone was inside. Not a guest, not a neighbor, but HOA Karen. My own home, the place I'd saved years for, was being rented out. Without my permission. Without a single word to me. Every door, every window screamed that my sanctuary had been turned into someone else's profit. And the worst part, I walked right into it. What she didn't know was that I was about to turn the tables in a way she would never forget. But how far would I have to go to reclaim what was mine? For years, the lake had been my escape, a quiet sanctuary where the world's noise faded into the gentle ripple of water against the dock, and the scent of pine filled the air. I had poured my heart, savings, and weekends into this cabin, fixing every creaking floorboard, painting every wall, and planting wildflowers along the shoreline. Life here was simple, peaceful, and mine. Or at least that's what I thought. The neighborhood was a mix of long-time residents and weekend visitors. Most polite, a few curious. But nothing had ever felt threatening. HOA Karen had always been in the periphery, sharp-tongued, nosy, always pointing out a crooked fence here or a dead shrub there. I'd seen her enforce petty rules with an iron grip, making neighbors nervous, but it never touched me directly. Until that one summer, when she started showing too much interest in my property. At first, it was small things: a glance, a question about my plans for the cabin, a subtle insinuation that the HOA had rules everyone should follow. I brushed it off, thinking it was just her personality. But there was a cold calculation behind those eyes, a silent warning that she didn't just enforce rules. She found ways to bend them to her advantage. And that's when I didn't realize my peaceful sanctuary was about to become a battlefield I never signed up for. One where the lines between neighborly oversight and outright theft would blur, and where everything I loved might be at risk without me even noticing. At first, the signs were subtle, almost easy to dismiss. Letters slipped under my door with cryptic threats about violations. Emails from the HOA insisting I submit plans for things I hadn't even touched, and casual comments from neighbors about how Karen keeps an eye on everything. I tried to brush it off, thinking it was just bureaucracy. Until the day I noticed someone had walked the perimeter of my property, checking locks and gates, while I wasn't looking. Then came the strange rental inquiries. Friends called me, asking if my cabin was available for weekend stays, and that's when it hit me. Someone was offering my property for rent. My blood ran cold, but I had no proof, no warning, and the HOA's rules were intentionally vague, giving Karen the perfect cover. I spent nights researching the HOA's bylaws, digging through emails, photos, and tax records, piecing together the impossible. She had been manipulating permits, quietly convincing people she had authority over the property, and renting it out for profit without my consent. Every attempt to confront her through emails or polite requests was met with obfuscation, denial, and veiled threats, as if the more I dug, the more she tightened the grip around my own home. Fines started appearing, absurd amounts for alleged violations I had never committed, notices claiming I'd breached obscure HOA clauses that didn't even exist. Even neighbors who once waved and smiled now avoided eye contact, wary of Karen's influence and the whispered power she wielded. My frustration grew, my sense of helplessness gnawed at me, but so did a burning determination to reclaim my home. I installed cameras, tracked visitors, documented everything meticulously, and discovered the shocking extent of her operation: bookings, payments, and even guest reviews, all pointing to my property being exploited for profit. It felt like every day brought a new insult, a new violation, a new layer of control she thought she had over my life, but the closer I got, the more audacious her moves became. Until one afternoon, I finally walked onto my dock and saw a family unloading luggage, laughter echoing across the water, completely unaware that their rental was stolen. That was the moment the situation crystallized. Karen wasn't just overstepping boundaries. She had weaponized the HOA, my neighbor's fear, and legal loopholes to claim what was mine. The tension was unbearable, and I knew the next move would have to be decisive. What I didn't know yet was how far I would need to go, and how spectacularly the tables were about to turn. But one thing was clear: this battle was no longer about polite requests or letters. It had become personal, and there was no turning back now. The day of reckoning arrived with a tension that made every heartbeat feel like a drumroll. I arrived at my lake house early. Cameras rolling, documents in hand, evidence meticulously organized, and an unshakable determination burning in my chest. Karen was already there, supervising what she clearly thought was her operation. A family unpacking luggage, laughing as if the cabin was theirs to command, blissfully unaware that the entire foundation of their weekend getaway was built on fraud. I walked onto the dock, my presence sudden and unignorable, and the air shifted instantly. The laughter faltered, eyes widened, and Karen's smug expression began to crumble under the weight of reality. Pulling out my meticulously prepared evidence, I revealed bookings, payments, guest reviews, and her forged permits, every piece of paper a testament to her audacity and greed. I recited, in precise detail, how she had manipulated HOA rules, exploited neighbors' fear, and turned my property into a personal cash machine. And the more I spoke, the more the crowd, guests, neighbors, even passive bystanders, turned their attention to her, disbelief etched on their faces. Karen tried to bluff, to threaten, to claim some fabricated authority, but each attempt fell flat, drowned out by the damning proof in my hands, and the cameras silently recording every word, every lie unmasked. The adrenaline surged as I called the local authorities, officers who had been previously briefed, to report the illegal rental and fraudulent activity, and moments later, the flashing lights of police cars illuminated the property, and Karen's world began to unravel in real time. She attempted excuses, denial, even tears, but the officers had already reviewed the evidence. Every fraudulent transaction, every forged permit, every deceptive email was logged and irrefutable. Her public humiliation was total. Neighbors stared, guests realized they had been unwitting participants in her scheme, and the HOA's fabricated power crumbled before the weight of undeniable truth. The satisfaction was visceral, a mixture of vindication, fury, and triumph, as I watched her being escorted off my property, powerless, exposed, and entirely accountable for the chaos she had created. At that moment, I felt the full circle of justice settle over the lake, a tension that had stretched for months snapping, leaving only clarity and the knowledge that control, evidence, and patience could topple even the boldest abuse of power. But, just as relief washed over me, I realized one shocking question remained. Had I uncovered everything, or were there still more secrets, buried in the shadow of the HOA's influence, waiting to surface? After the police escorted Karen off the property, the lake house finally felt like mine again. A sanctuary reclaimed from months of manipulation, fear, and stolen trust, but the consequences of her actions rippled far beyond that moment. The local HOA, which had previously turned a blind eye to her antics and even attempted to leverage their flimsy authority against me, faced an internal investigation, with board members forced to answer for complicity and negligence, resulting in resignations, fines, and a complete restructuring that left the community wary of giving unchecked power to a few self-appointed enforcers. The guests who had unknowingly rented the cabin were refunded. Their reviews turned into warnings online that exposed Karen's scheme to a wider audience, preventing further exploitation, and simultaneously reinforcing the importance of verifying ownership and legitimacy before handing over money. Even in seemingly idyllic vacation spots, neighbors, many of whom had silently suffered under petty rules and passive intimidation, came forward to share their stories, creating a network of support, vigilance, and accountability that transformed the atmosphere of the community from fear to empowerment. And I realized that reclaiming my property was only the first step toward healing the fractured neighborhood. Legally, Karen faced charges for fraud, unauthorized use of property, and violations of local rental ordinances, and the court system, now fully aware of her tactics, imposed restitution, probation, and a prohibition from participating in HOA activities or property management for a set number of years, ensuring that she could no longer exploit the community without consequences. Personally, I felt a mixture of relief, exhaustion, and an unexpected clarity. The months of research, careful documentation, and steady patience had culminated, not in reckless retaliation, but in a methodical, irrefutable vindication that protected both my property and my integrity. The lake house itself became a symbol, not just of personal victory, but of resilience, boundaries, and the power of standing firm against abuse, a lesson I shared openly with neighbors, friends, and online viewers, turning my experience into a cautionary tale that inspired vigilance, empowerment, and proactive defense of one's rights. Over time, the community regained trust in legal processes, and the HOA's newfound transparency and accountability became a model for other neighborhoods struggling with similar overreach, demonstrating that even in small, seemingly tranquil towns, corruption and abuse could be challenged successfully when evidence, courage, and strategy aligned. Yet, the experience left an indelible mark, a reminder that vigilance is ongoing, that those who exploit trust are patient and persistent, and that reclaiming what is rightfully yours may require more than confrontation. It demands foresight, tenacity, and a willingness to turn adversity into empowerment. I learned that the fight was never just about a property. It was about asserting boundaries, reclaiming dignity, and inspiring a community to hold power accountable. And every glance at the restored lake cabin reminded me of that hard-earned victory, the long-term impact of standing firm, and the lingering question for any viewer watching. If faced with someone like Karen, would you have the courage and strategy to protect what is yours, or would you let fear dictate your boundaries?